Hey everybody, I hope that there wasn't much of an issue with viewing the videos and getting something from the lessons. Please continue to submit questions if you have them. If you don't want to comment on the YouTube video, you don't have to. You're welcome to send me an email. If I feel like your email merits a video or a response before we have class on Wednesday, then I will make another video like this one. So one of your classmates asked this question I have posted here. She's asking about the negative. So if you look in your lab manual to the metrics table, centi is 10 to the minus 2, milli is 10 to the minus 3, and so forth and so on. But whenever I was giving you guys the information, I didn't put in the negative numbers. I did that on purpose. I think the use of the negative number can be extremely confusing to some people. However, if you understand that it's there, there are times when you can use it to your advantage. So what I intend on doing is giving you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. And I think with examples, it will help. So I'm going to use, since she asked me about centi, I'm going to continue and I'm going to use centi. So there's a couple shortcut things. So for instance, so if we use centi here, 10 to the minus 2, let's use meters just for the sake. Meters equals 1 centimeter. Okay, that's what that negative means. Now, if you look at, let's say I had 3.67 times 10 to the negative 2 centimeters, and I wanted to convert that to meters. What could I do? What you want to do is, there's one way you can do that with using this negative exponent, and that's just to replace this centi here with another negative 2. So centi, we said, means negative 2. So your answer would be 3.67 times, and we add those exponents together to the negative 4 meters. Now, that's very straightforward. Okay? That's helpful, but it may be a little bit confusing. So let's take a look. I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to show you why I choose to leave off the negative. So what I'm going to do is delete that. I'm going to set up a conversion problem. So my pen has disappeared. Come back. There it is. 3.67 times 10 to the minus 2 centimeters. Just to give you an idea, or it can mean that there's 10 to the 2 centimeters in 1 meter. These two things mean exactly the same thing. So I could say railroad tracks. There's 10 to the 2 centimeters in 1 meter. And I put too much. Let me erase a little bit of this so that I have room to write. All right, equals. And it's the same thing. It's going to be 3.6. And put this into your calculator. Don't do head math unless you have to do it. Negative 4 centimeters. Now, you're probably asking, notice that it's the same. There is another way you could set this up. Okay, but what I want you to look at, and I'm going to change the color of my pen just so I can emphasize it. This, if you put this section into your calculator, it is going to give back to you 10 to the minus 2. All right, now keep that in mind. I'm going to erase this and I'm going to set it up another way. I don't mean this to be confusing. It probably is a little bit, but you got to make a choice. You either want to use the negatives or not use the negatives, especially when you're learning. If you had been doing this for years, or you feel extremely comfortable with the metric system, I would say, you can go interchangeably. But I would say as you're learning, pick a method. I would prefer, I think it's easier if you disregard the negatives. And let me show you why I think that. Let me delete all this at the bottom. So I'm going to write this again as a conversion problem, 67 times 10 to the minus 2 centimeters. If you want to use this one, you're doing the same math. You're going to have to put 10 to the minus 2 meters over 1 centimeter here to get your answer of 3.67 times 10 to the negative 2. I just personally think that it's easier to remember that centi is 100 and put the number next to the centi versus putting it up on the top. Another thing I prefer to say, so this is not my preferred method. My preferred method would be the other. That doesn't mean my preferred method is the best method. That doesn't mean that at all. What that means is I think that's the easiest thing. But if it's confusing to you, and again, we can switch this out. I can erase it. This and what I'm about to write are exactly the same thing. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to write something else. I'm going to write 10 to the minus 2 down here, put 1 on the top. No matter which way I write it, it means the same thing. However, I can't put 10 to the negative 2 on the bottom like this. If I do that, then that changes my whole answer. That makes it not correct. That changes this ratio. 10 to the minus 2 centimeters is not equal to 1 meter. So I can't write this negative on the bottom. This is the problem right here with using negative numbers. When you're using this ratio right here, you will never get it wrong. However, and same thing with this one. If you memorize these the way they are, like this, you will never get them wrong. But it's the problem is if you accidentally switch them. So if you were to write it like that. Or the same thing goes here. If you were to write 10 to the 2 meters is equal to 1 centimeter. That is not the case. That is not true. So it's just a matter of what you're comfortable with. If you want to use the negatives, use the negatives. But I think it's easier to go with the rule of thumb. 1 goes next to the larger unit, and then you can use this method. So if you go with what I said before, do your math and put 1 next to the larger unit, then you can just write 10 to the 2 on the bottom, and you never have to worry about the negatives. So I hope that helps. If it doesn't, please write a message and let me know, and I'll try another problem. Let's do, actually before I close this off, let's do one more. I'm going to delete all of this, and I'm going to delete this as well. Let's see, delete. All right. So what if we do 8.3 liters? I'm just going to stick with centi because that's what to centiliters. Now you can do 8.3. I'm going to set up both ways. And then 8, I'm going to write it down both ways. And I just want you to know that, let's write the conversion factors over here. For every 1 liter, there's 10 to the 2 centiliters. Or you can write 10 to the minus 2 liters is equal to 1 centiliter. These are exactly the same thing. So whichever one you feel comfortable with memorizing is ultimately fine. Notice though where you're writing it. Again, I think it's easier to remember that centi is 100 and you keep this with the centi. I feel like mistakes occur when you use this one, but again, it's really up to you and what you prefer. So I'm going to set it up both ways so you kind of see what we're doing. Again, remember, use the units first. So we know we want to cancel out liters, and that we ultimately want a unit in centiliters. So here, if I use the first conversion factor, for every 1 liter, and again 1 goes next to the larger unit, centi's 100, so it's 10 to the 2. Now for this one, if you use the bottom one, 1 goes here, and then 10 to the minus 2. If you remember your math, when you actually divide by this, it makes this exponent positive when you move it to the top. So these are the same thing. You're still going to get the same answer. 8.3 times 10 to the second centiliters. 8.3 times 10 to the second centiliters. All right, I hope that helps. I did take a look. If you're taking a look at your Chapter 2 review, a lot of the questions are multi-step questions. Make sure, especially starting with like number 9, you have to do, these are 2-step problems, so make sure you're doing them. I want to give you an example and go ahead and do number 9 for you from your chapter review so that you kind of get an idea. Really make sure that you understand what you're doing here, because these can be a little bit confusing. So here, show chapter 2 review, and I'm looking at number 9 here. Number 9 says 7.03 centimeters to millimeters. Notice in our metrics table, we do not know how many centimeters are in a millimeter. So when you're setting this up, I always say set up a flow chart of how you want to organize your information. And I would recommend going from centimeters to meters, and then from meters to millimeters. You could do this, for this, we know how many centimeters are in a meter, and we know how many meters in a millimeter. So that makes things a little bit easier. You will be doing a 2-step problem. I like to write it all out as one, but you're welcome to write it out as 2 problems. So start with this 7.03 centimeters, and then set up your robo track. Centimeters, and then again meters, because we're going to do this first part here. And then meters to millimeters. Again, notice I wrote just units. If we look at this section here, the larger unit here is is meter, so you put the 1 next to the meter, and then we know centi's 100, so we're going to do, just going to write down 100 here. I made a mistake. Let's fix that before we continue on. Put my second M. All right, so this is going to go on the top, millimeters. Again, 1 goes next to the larger unit. Meters is larger, so we put that here, and milli is 1,000. So what you want to do when you put this information into your calculator, 7.03 times 1,000 divided by 100. If you want to, you can use scientific notation. I think that's easier, but that's just my preference. That's 10 to the 2, and this is 10 to the 3. In scientific notation, when you bring a number to the top, like this, it becomes negative. So you kind of think about 10 to the 2. And then you're going to subtract these 2. So 3 minus 2 is 7.03 times 10 to the 1 millimeters. And let me try to get that in there somehow. Please check it when you do it. So just to double check my math, there's a minus 2 here. So 7.03. If anything I wrote in blue confuses you, completely ignore it and just plug it into your calculator. So 7.03 times 1,000 divided by 100. And you should get, now my calculator spits back to me. Let me get this. The answer here is 70.3 millimeters. If you put that in scientific notation, it's 7 times 10 to the 1 millimeters. Either answer is fine, unless I specifically ask for it in scientific notation. So it's really up to you. But notice I did this in 2 steps. Here, this was step 1. And then this is step 2. So you have to convert to that base unit before you can do anything else. This base unit is very important. Convert there first. Again, because Our metrics table tells us the relationship between centimeters and meters and millimeters. It does not give us a relationship between centimeters and millimeters. Again, I hope that helps. If you have questions, please email. All right, see you guys on Wednesday.